Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all joining us today. Welcome and Akwaba, as we say it in Ghana. My name is Ruby Golo, the Executive Director for Global Chamber in Accra. Just some few housekeeping rules before we start. We will appreciate it if you could keep your microphones on mute unless you are called to speak. You are free to use a reaction button and the chat box to share your thoughts or ask questions during the Q&A section. For those joining us for the first time, Global Chamber supports cross-border trade through warm introductions. We are the only chamber of commerce located in 198 countries, and we operate from 525 metros across the globe. Membership is open to all, including students, because we like to catch them very young. And so if you like what we do here today and would like to know how you can join our global tribe, then please do get in touch with me or speak with our Deputy Director, Ingrid, who is in the audience as well. As you would agree with me, there cannot be trade without credible payment systems. It is for this reason that we are excited to have officials from the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, PAPSS, present to us on the topic, the game changer for intra-Africa trade and commerce. And moderating today's section is a very good friend of mine and colleague, Isaac Hubert Alter, who is the Executive Director for Africa Center for International Trade and Development, a trade policy think tank based in Accra, Ghana, with a mandate to build sustainable trade development capacity in Africa. He's an experienced international trade and investment promotion expert and development practitioner. He has previously worked with the Australian High Commission, Canadian High Commission, British High Commission, where we work together, Ghana UK Chamber of Commerce, and recently with Artisan Bank, just to mention a few. He is bilingual and he speaks fluent French. So we are very lucky to have Isaac joining us today. On this note, I will hand over to Isaac to take it away. Your opening remarks, Isaac.
Thank you very much, Ruby, and good afternoon to our speakers, colleagues from Afresian Bank, and members of the Global Chamber, Accra. It's a privilege to moderate this session on PAPSS, which is a very important platform so far as trading in Africa here is concerned. So I'll just give a small brief about AFCFTA and how important. We all know that AFCFTA has really come to stay. It is a free trade area for us in Africa, which is giving us a huge market, the biggest, to trade under since the formation of the WTO. And then I would say that having a platform like the PAPSS, which arguably is one of the main tools or one of the main, projects that is going to help in the implementation of the AFCFTA, is really crucial for every business person, every firm operating in this our African space, to have a single market, that is going to facilitate the movement, the free movement of goods and services across all the borders that we have. I think it's a privilege to want to have a whole webinar or meeting focused on the role of PAPSS, and we are happy to have the team here. So as we know, the AFCFTA, it's as I said, it's a free trade area which is giving us a very huge market. We are serving a population of about 1.3 billion people in Africa, and then with a combined GDP of about 3.4 trillion, across the 55 countries that we have in Africa. And then we know, as it's also been said by the World Bank, that the AfCFTA, when fully implemented, has the potential to increase African exports by $560 billion, while boosting Africa's income by $450 billion by 2035. So that's a huge opportunity for us. And out of the 450 billion, we even have about 292 billion, which will come from stronger trade facilitation, which includes measures to reduce the red tapes, simplify the customs procedures, and also make it easier for businesses to integrate into the global supply chains. And notably we knew right from day one, based on our operations and work in Africa, that one of the major challenges of intra-Africa trade is payments. How to receive money and then how to make payments was one of the major challenges, that we were encountering. And looking at how the African market is open, if trading is going to go on successfully, then we need to solve the problem of payments. So there was the need to have a common platform, because there were so many different platforms that were being used. The challenges with converting currencies always into one currency or the other. I mean, people in Ghana here have to always carry the cedis and go and buy the dollars before they'll be able to make payments to their business counterparts in the other countries and all of that. But now we have one major continental payment platform, which is the PAPSS, the Pan-African Payments and Settlements. Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, has come to stay, and it's been launched, it's operating. But then the businesses are asking so many questions. They want to know, how do we benefit from this? How do we use this platform? So it's an opportunity for us to have our experts who are working on the PAPSS to address some of these concerns that the businesses are having. So it's a privilege for me it's going to be a very short session, not long. We're going to have the Assistant Chief Executive, Mr. John Bosco Sababi, who will give us a presentation. And then after the presentation, we'll give the opportunity to our participants, our members, to ask questions, which they will address and respond to. And then if time permits, we'll also have the CEO of Global Chamber giving us the closing comments. So that's how the order is going to be, very straightforward. So without wasting much time, I have Mr. John Bosco Sababi. I never had a chance to meet you in person. When I was working with the African Export-Import Bank in the Intra-Africa Trade Initiative Division, I left them not long ago, somewhere in January. So it's quite a short time. But I mean, through emails and other platforms, we were seeing their names, but we never had opportunity to meet in person. But it's a great opportunity for me to see you through this camera. So Mr. John is a very experienced. When I saw that I got a profile, I couldn't. I mean, he's a huge man. He's a very big man on this continent who had done a lot of work. So without wasting too much time, Mr. John, before you come, let me just share with our participants, our members, a brief of your profile. I may not be able to go through all, but I will share just a brief. Mr. John holds an MSc in International Economics, Banking and Finance from Cardiff University, from the United Kingdom. He also has a BSc in Economics, an associate degree in Economics, both completed with distinctions from the University of Rwanda, which was formerly the National University of Rwanda. And he has a certificate in financial planning and policy also from the IMF. He's a fellow of the Fletcher Leadership Program for Financial Inclusion of the Fletcher School, Taft University in the US. He holds several executive education certificates, which I will not continue to mention all of them. He has 22 years of experience in the financial sector and was, until joining Afreximbank, Bank, a consultant with the World Bank, working on the establishment of the Africa-wide payment platform. He's a former chairman of the Rwanda Airports Company, the Eastern and Southern Africa Trade and Development Bank, which is formerly known as the PTA Bank, and the vice chairman of Coge Bank, and to date serves on the board of Bralingwa and Access Bank, Botswana. Lastly, but not the least, he was also a Deputy Director General of the Rwanda Social Security Board in charge of funds management. So you can see where his experience when it comes to the banking sector. He was also the Chief Operating Officer for the East Africa Commodity Exchange that is mandated to uplift the national and regional economies by eliminating market barriers. So he has a lot of experience when it comes to funds management and then banking operations. He used to be also the Director General of the Operations Directorate at the National Bank of Rwanda, where he had a successful career. Mr. Bosco has been a key resource person on several boards, committees, and task forces. He was a member of the G5 panel of experts that was constituted by the World Bank to set up guidelines for successful regional integration of financial infrastructure. He's an ardent squash player, swimmer, and a leisurely golfer. Mr. Bosco, it's a pleasure to give you the platform to share with us what PAPSS is all about. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Isaac. And thank you very much, Ruby, for the invitation to be able to present PAPSS to a very distinguished group like yours. It's really indeed a pleasure to be here. I'm here with my colleague, Noel Aja, who is the assistant manager for participants. He deals with the getting participants on board, making sure they have all the requirements to participate and they are connected. So he'll also be talking and going through some presentations with me. And I bring greetings from the whole PAPSS team, including the CEO and my colleagues as well. I'll put up the slides, just give me a minute. I'll share this. Just give me a minute. Just give me a minute and I get the presentation so that I can be able to share it with you.
Yeah, Bosco, I was wondering if we can kick off with the short video whilst you're looking for the presentation.
Oh, yes, I think, no, thank you for that. So please just display the video as I get the presentations on the screen.
Okay, perfect. Please let me know when you can see my screen. I will play video on PAPSS. Please advise me when you can actually see my screen.
We do. Please go ahead.
Okay, that's fine.
Go ahead, Noel.
Okay. So I will need to ensure that the sound is
Please do.
Yeah.
Can you hear the sound?
I think we have a small issue with the sound. So let me just get the sound proper.
I can't hear the sound, maybe.
Yes, we can't see the sound. Okay, I think we should be able now to.
Okay.
Please confirm with me when you can.
Introducing PAPSS, the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, supported by Afrexim Bank, the African Union, and the AfCFTA, that's connecting cross-border payments in Africa today, linking banks, payment service providers, governments and fintechs, making intra-African trade faster, more affordable, more inclusive, and supporting our shared vision to be one unified market under the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, overcoming the fragmentation that created new borders, hampering intra-African trade for generations. With PAPSS digital capability, you can reap the rewards of this transformation by enabling your clients' cross-border payments to be instant and cost-efficient, with transactions initiated and settled in local currencies, fully secure with best-in-class ISO 222 encoding, and totally transparent with enhanced analytics for better informed decision-making. If you're ready to extend your reach across Africa and accelerate trade across borders for you and your clients, it's time to connect to PAPSS. Connecting payments, accelerating Africa's trade. Discover what PAPSS can do for you at papss.com.
Okay.
And there you are.
Thank you. Yes.
And there you are. If you want to expand your business across Africa, here we are. Bring about PAPSS to be able to ensure that your payments go through in a secure manner. Can you see my presentation now?
Yes.
Excellent. So I'll go through a couple of things. First of all, before we go into any discussions, I would like to set the scene. What's the business case? Why do we need the payment system in Africa? To show you where we are in Africa, how do payments today, and what PAPSS wants to improve and intends to improve. We'll go through the rationale and design principles. Why PAPSS? Why should it exist? Why should we do it? And how has it been designed to be able to support African trade or intra-African trade? And naturally, any structure, any financial market infrastructure of this magnitude must have a governance structure. Governance conforms a very big element, especially in terms of the principles for financial market infrastructures, as written by the Committee on Payments and Settlement Systems, by the BIS. So this governance is a very big aspect, and I will go through how the governance under PAPSS is structured. Then we'll go through the PAPSS journey, where we are, the pilot, and where we are today. And I'll let my colleague go through the use cases, how it is practically one can use PAPSS, whether a bank, a fintech, a money transfer, and any other entity within the financial sector that's dealing with cross-border payments. The business case. We know today is that we have payments going through many channels. When we want to send money from Ghana to Mali, there will be one channel. One will go to their banks, and the banks must have correspondent banks either in the US, in North America, or in Europe to be able to effect this. So this is what's happening today. This is how transactions are moving today, from Africa, out of Africa, and back to Africa. And this is what PAPSS I would like to cut out, to make faster, so that the transactions on the African continent can remain on the continent. We all know that any wealth must be retained. So we must retain our own wealth as Africans to be able to prosper. In terms of figures, these may not be to the dot, but the bank, the Afrexim Bank, made a survey, and we found out that every year Africa spends $5 billion in terms of payment charges for all transactions that we do, whether businesses or individuals. We spend $5 billion. This is close or bigger than most of the GDPs of many countries on the continent, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. These are resources we could retain and use for different cases. In 2017, $18.8 billion in terms of the SWIFT statistics were commercial payments made within Africa. And this is estimated to rise to 33 billion. And out of that, only 20% was settled on the African continent, or settled by an entity on the African continent. Now, all the 80% was settled by entities outside Africa. This shows us that actually Pan-African payment systems has got to be set up, and there's a business case for it. Now, let's look at what are the design principles for, and what's the rationale of having a Pan-African payment system. SFTA was signed in, that's the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, was signed in 2019 by all heads of state. And this formed what we call the African Continental Free Trade Area, which is the biggest market so far in terms of GDP. Now, with this to be successful, we require that we must have an integrated continent-wide payment infrastructure. The way payments are structured today, Isaac mentioned it, they are fragmented in a way. We have every region with its own payment system. We have COMESA with a regional payment and settlement system. We have
Mr. Bosco, sorry to interrupt, but it looks like we're getting some noise from your background. I don't know.
Let me see what I can do on it. Let me just give me 1 minute.
Someone is talking from your background, so maybe if you can ask them to keep silent. Thank you.
Yes, we have solved that. Thank you, Ruby, for mentioning that. Thanks a lot. So in terms of the African payment systems today, we have national payment systems and we have regional payment systems. We've got, every region in Africa has got a firm payment system that's working within that region very well, and sometimes settling in the third currency, which is not a big problem as such. However, that fragmentation cannot support intra-African trade to prosper and SFTA to prosper. So that has resulted in a lot of diversion of trade and has made cross-border transactions very expensive, which is actually estimated to be 5 billion. Now, this expense comes in so many ways. This is what we estimate in terms of fees, but there's also an expense in terms of time. In terms of time, to be able to, for a transaction to leave one country in Africa to another may take around 5 days, 3 to 5 days. I have a case that somebody has reported to me that a payment from one of the African countries to another has taken 10 days. And at that time of reporting, they hadn't even received the funds. So all those inconveniences are cost in a way. And also last year, there's a very big dependence on foreign currencies, on dollars or euros. Now, this becomes a cost in another form. Sorry, what did we look when we were designing the PAPSS, as we call it? We looked at what the issues are on the continent in terms of payment, and we looked at what we need to have. We need to have one of the principles to have a payment system that actually pays in local currencies, where a trader in Ghana will not go through the hassle of looking for a dollar or a euro to be able to trade with Nigeria or with Sierra Leone or with Gambia, but will be able to issue that in their own currencies, the CD. We also looked at settlement finality. To be able to have a system of this nature, we must have an institution that can back payment finality. Remember that once a payment is issued out, it's final and irrevocable. Whether the institution the settlement agent has the liquidity or not, there should be an institution behind to support the settlement agents to be able to settle. And we also thought that, well, we need to invest in a centralized infrastructure to be able to come up. It has to be centralized at the African level and dealing with the whole market of Africa as one market, one digital market. The other principal element was that we need to look at the legal framework. How is the legal framework in terms of setup, in terms of the management? Which kind of legal framework is it based on? I also have to look at the technology. What kind of technology can we deploy to be able to run this kind of infrastructure without compromising the quality or the efficiency of the systems? Lastly, we also know that payment systems, we can't talk about payment systems without talking about central banks. Payment systems they are a realm of central banks. So central banks must have a very big say in this, and we have to have a system that brings all of them on board. Now, the other important element was we must prove the concept. Prove the concept by piloting this system in an environment that reflects what's happening in the rest of Africa. And this will come to it and explain how our pilot was done in a region that actually reflects what's happening in the rest of Africa. We also recognize that to have a system of this nature, we must have a regulatory framework. And so working with central banks, the African Association of African Central Banks and SAFTA Secretariat, African Bank set out to provide support for this to happen. This is a work in progress so far. So let's look at what PAPSS is today and how it checks all the design principles, how they have all been considered and how they are operating today. In terms of the sound legal basis, African Bank is implementing AGS of PAPSS. And in its own mandate in 1993, the signatories, who are the African governments, mandated PAPSS, mandated African Bank to facilitate payment systems. And that's the reason the advent of the SAFTA Secretariat, the AU Assembly mandated and endorsed PAPSS as the African payment system. Therefore, at the meeting of the AU heads of state in Niamey, it was SFT was launched and PAPSS was endorsed, and actually African Bank directed to implement a payment system that will be able to support intra-African trade in the SFTA framework. So the legal basis to form this is strong and survivable. We also, the transactions today are instant and are done in local currencies. They originate in local currency from the sending jurisdiction to the receiving jurisdiction, and the all in local currencies. So this is a very big principle for us, because the G20 has identified 4 elements and 4 challenges with cross-border payment systems. 1 is the cost, 2 is access, 3 is transparency, and speed. So here we're using local currencies, and it's an instant which we're dealing with speed, and also terminating local currencies, and with access to every player. The pilot. We completed a very successful pilot in the West African Monetary Zone, which is constituted by six countries, 6 central banks, and 6 currencies as well. Now, we all know that in Africa, we have this language barrier sometimes. We have countries that speak English, others that speak French. So we wanted a region that speaks both languages to be able to implement and pilot a system that can handle both languages. This we have achieved in the WAMS region. And PAPSS is running on a secure and proven technology, which is around the ISO 20022, which is the latest technology in the payments area, which is in the payments domain and with the highest security features. So that's what PAPSS runs on. Now, in terms of the payment finality, who is guaranteeing the payment finality in PAPSS? Afreximbank is guaranteeing the payment finality to all central banks that are participating as settlement agents. What does this mean? The central banks are settlement agents within for their jurisdictions. Now, if the central bank stands for settlement and the central bank, for reason or another, the liquidity has not gone through, the Afreximbank will give a facility for the central bank to be able to draw on and be able to settle. So that doesn't compromise trades that have happened between countries. So that has been guaranteed, and the Afreximbank has done that, and that has been ticked off as well. In terms of the cooperation with central banks, PAPSS is a central bank-centric model, and central banks are at the center stage of putting the system in place, and they do serve on the PAPSS Governing Council. I will show you later on the governance structure how that is done. In terms of integration, PAPSS is flexible to integrate to national systems and also regional systems. So that the fragmented regional payment systems and national systems can all join PAPSS so that can connect to each other. And also lastly, in terms of setting up PAPSS, developing it, we collaborate on each and every regional payment system that's available on the African continent. So we spoke to every system to understand the challenges, to understand the objectives, and to understand the plans and the future. So we all went through them, and what we put in place answers most of the challenges that are faced by regional payment systems. Let's look at the African trade and the SFTA, the implications and opportunities. Now, SFTA presents an opportunity to deepen economic integration, to drive structural transformation, and the opportunity to drive export diversification. So if you look at all this, the slide that I have here, we are showing trade in different years across the world. Now, we also, if you look at, we've been talking about intra-African trade for quite a while. And we've been saying, well, we have challenges, non-tariff barriers, we have roads, poor infrastructure, roads are bad, rails are not there, air transport is expensive. And this has happened for a while. We have been talking about energy and all that kind of thing. However, we think that payment systems, the soft aspects like payment systems, have been neglected for quite a while. Actually, this is not 48% of settlement process. It is 80% is settled across outside Africa, 39 goes to US, and more comes back to us when it has gone through other continents. So these are big challenges, and we think that payment systems can solve this. What are the critical objectives in terms of supporting SFTA that PAPSS brings, or PAPSS aims to achieve? To increase intra-African trade, to facilitate economic and regional integration, reduce costs of cross-border payments across Africa. Here we look at in terms of reducing the duration and time variability of cross-border payments across Africa by decreasing liquidity requirements of commercial banks and central banks alike, And the main objective is to disintermediate correspondent banking so that African entities can communicate direct through their central bank, through their banks on the continent, and be able to effect payments. Now, what's the ecosystem of PAPSS? Ecosystem of PAPSS is, we look at the core system that we've set up, which has got instant payment systems, that's got FX and liquidity management, got clearing and settlement and sanction screening and all that. That's within one system that we've implemented, which is the PAPSS core system. Now, we have participants like the central banks that come in as direct participants, and we have commercial banks that come in as direct participants as well. Now, above that, within that, we have the indirect participants that will ride in the back of the direct participants. And these are money transfer operators, mobile money transfer, card schemes, all the participants in what we call the payment service providers. So all these ride on this ecosystem. And around that, we'll have products that can be innovated by ourselves or by our partners, and any other payment service provider can initiate, can innovate a product and come and ride on the rails of PAPSS to be able to manage it. The governance. The governance framework operates on 4 key layers. We have the PAPSS Governing Council, which is the highest regulating organ. This is made up of central bank governors that are participants in PAPSS. When any central bank joins PAPSS, the governor becomes a member of the governing council. That means that governors are regulating and overseeing this. Why do we do this? Because payment systems are a very important infrastructure that supports economic activity. And anything that can compromise a payment system will compromise the stability of the financial sector as a whole. And this time around with PAPSS, it can affect many African countries. So we have central banks running this and overseeing it at the highest level and taking all the decisions. Below that, or within actually the PGC, or as we call it, we have the Payment Systems Oversight Committee. This is within the central banks and managed and composed of the heads of payment systems within central banks. These are the experts in the area of oversight of payment systems, and also they normally look at the payment system policies and can align and advise the PGC on what, and the PAPSS on what decisions to take. And below that, we have the PAPSS Management Board, which is like the Board of Governors, and it's responsible for the technical and operational management of PAPSS. And then we have the PAPSS management on a day-to-day basis, which is run by the CEO and myself as the Deputy CEO. Where are we today? Today we have 6 banks that are live on the system and 2 other banks that have signed up. And we have 27 banks across the 6 countries that have signed up and are being implemented and being integrated. We have several switches. We have about 7 switches. We have about 4 that have already integrated. And we also have a switch in the East African region, the Rwanda switch, ARA switch, and the GAM switch that are in the process of signing up and being integrated as well. Now, that said, in terms of regions, we have BEAC, the East African Community, and COMESA that we have already, we are in deep discussions with to be able to integrate them as regions. As I mentioned above, is that PAPSS has the capacity to integrate with both national and regional payment systems. So these are the regions we have approached. They have systems that are running, and we are advanced in terms of the discussions. However, they were also speaking to the others. We've had discussions with BCAO, had discussions with SADC as well, and ECAS as well. So we have many regions we are speaking to, and we are taking the continent one by one. At this point in time, I'll let Noel go through the use cases to show you how practically payments run through PAPSS. Noel, please take over.
Thank you very much, Bosco. Would you allow me to share my screen?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Okay. So can you please confirm with me that you can see my screen?
Yes, we can. Ruby, can you able to see?
Yes,
Isaac?
please go ahead.
Yeah, yes, you can see.
Okay, thank you very much. So I will take you through some use cases so that you further understand how PAPSS works. In PAPSS, we have many different participants. We have central banks, we have banks, commercial banks, and we have other entities that do not participate in the RTGS system or the central banks. So the use cases that I will take you through will highlight the roles of commercial banks and also of other entities that do not participate in the RTGS system in PAPSS. So before getting to this stage, we have the pre-funding stage. So for all participants to be able to initiate transaction onto PAPSS, they will need to pre-fund their account with PAPSS. So once the pre-funding activity has been completed, we are now getting to this stage. So let's take the example of a reseller which is located in Ghana, and I would like to purchase flour from a trader located in Nigeria. Let's assume that the reseller has an account open with a commercial bank which is located in Ghana, and that the trader has an account open with a commercial bank located in Nigeria, and both commercial banks are participants in PAPSS. So the reseller will initiate the transaction through internet banking or again through any other application provided by that commercial bank in Ghana. And once the commercial bank will receive the notification of the instruction from the reseller, the commercial bank will send a message with all payment details to PAPSS. PAPSS will validate the payment message and send a payment instruction to the commercial bank on the other side. That commercial bank will validate the trader's details and send a positive response to PAPSS. PAPSS will change the status of the transaction to final, and the funds will be credited into the trader's account. Both the reseller and the trader will receive the notification of the outcome of the transaction. And all of that will happen within 120 seconds. We were actually able to achieve it in 7 seconds on average during the pilot stage in the WAMZ region. So I'm taking you through another use case, highlighting again the roles of commercial banks in participant in PAPSS. So we have also Brice. Brice is a young professional from Gambia that would like to invest in the Nigerian Stock Exchange. So in order to do so, Brice would like to use again the services of a commercial bank, which is a participant in PAPSS. So Brice will initiate the transaction through internet banking, and then once that commercial bank will receive the instruction from Brice, that commercial bank will send a message with all payment details to PAPSS. PAPSS will validate the payment details, send the payment instruction to the commercial bank on the other side. That commercial bank will validate the broker's details and send a positive response to PAPSS, and then PAPSS will change the status of the transaction to final, and the funds will be credited into the broker's account. And both Brice and the broker will receive the notification of the outcome of the transaction. And again, all of that will happen in the maximum of 120 seconds. And as I said earlier, we're actually able to achieve it in 7 seconds on average during the pilot stage in the WAMZ region. And PAPSS completes all kind of validation and checks before the payment can actually be processed. And then PAPSS also ensures that the beneficiary's bank also complete validation of beneficiary's details before the payment is completed. So I'm now taking you through some use cases, highlighting the roles of other entities apart from banks, other entities that do not participate in the RTGS system of the central bank of the jurisdiction, but that can be participant in PAPSS. So we have Speedy Transfers. Speedy Transfers is a money transfer operator located in Ghana, and Speedy Transfer is a participant in PAPSS. And we have Matthew. Matthew is a Ghanaian citizen that would like to send some money to Paul. Paul, his brother that lives in Sierra Leone. Matthew would like to use the service of Speedy Transfers to do so. So Matthew will connect and initiate a transfer through web application or any other access channels provided by Speedy Transfers. Speedy Transfer will send a message with all payment details to PAPSS. PAPSS will validate the payment message and send a payment instruction to the commercial bank on the other side where Paul has an account open. And the same process that we described earlier will also happen here for Paul's account to be credited in a maximum of 120 seconds. And then this is another use case highlighting the role again of entities that do not participate in the RTGS system, but that can be participant in PAPSS. So we have Worldwide Mobile, which is a mobile money operator located in the Gambia, and we have Mr. John that would like to use Worldwide Mobile to pay the electricity bills of his family that lives back home in Liberia. So Mr. John will connect and initiate the payment of the bills. Then when Worldwide Mobile will receive the instruction from Mr. John, the entity will now send a message with all payment details to PAPSS. PAPSS will validate the payment message, and the same process that we had described earlier will also happen here for the National Electricity Suppliers account to be credited with the funds that have been sent by Mr. John, who is located in the Gambia. So that's the end of our presentation. We'll be really happy to take any questions that you may have. And back to you, Bosco.
Thank you very much, Noel. Isaac, back to you, and let's see, answer questions. Let's interact now.
Yes, thank you very much for very insightful and straight to the point presentation. I think I'm sure most of our members and participants have questions on their minds. In fact, the questions started coming before today. You know, we started receiving questions. That shows the interest that people have in this, you know, PAPSS system that we have. So we are very grateful for such a presentation. I want to urge every participant to please feel free to use the reaction. When you go to the reaction box, there's raise hand. So you can use that one to raise your hand to ask your question. If by any chance you don't want to raise your hand to speak directly, to ask your question, you can also drop your question in the chat box or pick it up, and then we will ask our experts from PAPSS, and they will respond to all those questions. So feel free, and then show by hand so that we can give you the floor to ask your question. You know, so once you do that, I want to throw in the first question that many people keep asking. Isn't PAPSS going to erode Africans the benefit of the foreign exchange income they receive for engaging in foreign transactions? Because now if people have to pay, people are paying local currencies, and then their counterparts also receive the money in local currencies. At the end of the day, the foreign exchange that normally they would have earned by receiving, let's say, dollars or pounds sterling or euros is eroded. You know, people have asked me that question several times because they knew I was working with Afreximbank. So how do I respond? You know, so now I have you here, Mr. Bosco. You are the expert. You and Noel, so you can respond to this question whilst we wait for others to ask more questions.
Thank you, Isaac. And I can see Odelia had a question, or maybe we take three.
Okay, that's fine.
But I'm happy to answer one by one.
Okay, no, I think let's go by that way so that we take three, whilst other people also drop in their questions as well. So Odelia, let's give you the floor. Please ask your question.
Hello, my name is Odelia, and I'm the CEO for ON Media, which is a PR company in Ghana that provides PR services to the rest of Africa and the world. My question is directly connected with what Isaac asked. Did I hear clearly that PAPSS is going to allow other forms of transaction on the platform? And how does this affect money transfer, which most of the time helps in the stabilizing of local currencies, especially when the currencies have challenges?
I think those two are related. Maybe we can handle them. Let me start with Odelia's question about stabilizing a currency. Now, let's take a step back and look at why the currency is unstable. The currency is unstable because the trades are occurring in other currencies, and we have to look for a third-party currency before we affect a trade, wherever we are. If you're trading with US, with Europe, it's okay because these are their currencies. Now, once you're trading with a neighboring country, with another currency, normally we say in Africa that our currencies are not convertible. But let's look at why they're not convertible and what brings about convertibility of a currency. The demand for a currency is a derived demand. One will not demand for a cedi, a Ghanaian cedi, if they're not going to buy any goods from Ghana. If I travel to Ghana, I want a cedi because I'm going to buy goods and services that are acceptable for everything in cities. If I don't do that, that means I don't need a cedi. So that means there will be no convertibility between my currency and the cedi. Now, because there's no established trade between our countries, we normally say, okay, can I put my currency in a dollar, third currency, and then demand for a cedi? So that causes the instabilities. And also because whatever we export, we feel it in dollars. So that brings all those instabilities. What can solve this is having increased trade amongst ourselves. Let's take an example. Look at the borderlines of countries. Most of those border informal traders do trade in their very own currencies with no dollar involved, with no one determining their exchange rate, but trade occurs. So this is what should be formalized in terms of establishing a formal payment system so that everything can become formalized, and that stability will be done by that trades that occur across the borders and without involving any third currency. To date, we are doing that because everything hinges around a foreign currency. So that's what is destabilizing us. And in terms of remittances, which you talked about, bringing dollars and then they stabilize the economy. Well, we will support remittances across Africa. But we're also looking at, say, after establishing ourselves on the African continent, how can we be able to give value to the remittance companies that bring in remittances from across the ocean? So that can be dealt with if one will increase trade and increase transactions in the framework of PAPSS. And that means there will be confidence now in currencies. And the intra-African trades or export and imports will be done now in currencies. So that will improve the confidence and the stability of currencies. I think, Isaac, that also comes to your, answers your question as well. Because what's happening, those losses are there, or gains are made because there's that trade that's happening and that need for a third currency. If that need wasn't there, then there will be no other losses or gains, as they call them. But let's look at the overarching objective of economies. If those people trading dealing with Forex today, there was increased trade between countries. That means there will be no need for any foreign currency business, and actually would increase our own trades and make more money within our own businesses. Because ultimately, the value of money is the money you can buy goods and services with. So we get those dollars, and what do? We go to the foreign exchange market and get local currencies. So that conversion itself, even if it appears lucrative, but somehow it's a general loss to the economies. That's how I can answer that.
Okay, I mean, thank you very much. For me, I think I'm okay with my question. Odelia, I'm sure you are also fine. And I have another question from Nihi. Nihi, please take the floor.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. My name is Niyi Sanusi. I'm a lawyer in Lagos, Nigeria. I heard Mr. Bosco talking about the Central African market finance infrastructure, I believe, and that Africa does not have that. Now, I want to understand how that differs from PAPSS and how that may, in view of the AFCFTA, of course, we need something that will link African markets financially together. So I want to understand how the major infrastructure differs from PAPSS and what can be done to enable this this infrastructure in place, whether it's something of a different structure entirely or how that can be done. Thank you very much.
I think, Isaac, let me answer that straight away so that Sanusi will be able to be with us and be able to have the response quickly. What we call financial market infrastructure is composed of payment systems, security settlement systems, and central counterparties. So these are all infrastructures that are within, that manage, that help run the financial markets. So we call them financial market infrastructure. So PAPSS is financial market infrastructure. So when we talk about the centralized market infrastructure, that's PAPSS we're talking about. But we can come in and also look at security settlement systems that can come to work with PAPSS. PAPSS deals with the settlement of the money flow, the monetary flow, where security settlement systems will also run in the terms of the securities flow. If you're going to buy your securities from Ghana or from Nigeria, since you're in Nigeria, there will be an exchange. Say shares are moving from Isaac, who is in Ghana, to you. But now how does the money flow back from you to him? Then PAPSS comes in. So that's why we all call this whole ecosystem of financial market infrastructures. So PAPSS is one of the financial market infrastructures that we need to coordinate the monetary flow between countries to enhance trade between African countries. I hope that answers your question.
But no problem. I think I'll reach you offline and maybe we'll take it from there. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bosco. Thank you, Sanusi. We have Janice. Janice, your hand is up. Please take the floor.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody.
Good
My
afternoon.
name is Janice. I'm Executive Director for Dampari Investments Limited. It's a business development and market entry consultancy based here in Ghana with a focus on energy, agribusiness, and commodities. My question to Bosco and his team is, first of all, I must commend you for the PAPSS initiative. It's very laudable. However, being a banking system and knowing how banks are with the small scale farmer or business person, how does PAPSS intend to reach out to the unbanked for there to be a seamless, transaction of business?
Thank you very much. Mr. Bosco, do I take another question, or you want to answer this one?
I think they just answer them when they're still fresh.
Okay.
Because that helps us for the person who asked the question to follow very well, and also for us to be able to handle it quickly.
Okay.
How does PAPSS intend to reach the unbanked? Now, in the ecosystem that we showed that financial market infrastructure of the payment system like PAPSS is going to be hinged on central bank elements and also the commercial banks. However, if we look at what we're doing, we intend to have indirect participants and also link to mobile money aggregators and any other payment service provider. This will help touch the last woman or man on the street, and then bring them into the formal system. Because what we're looking at today and what the world is looking at today is increasing financial inclusion. Now, the people that are excluded today, we want to bring on board, they are disadvantaged in a way, because by being informal and being outside the financial sector, that means they can't access to many services, including access to finance. So by providing a payment system and bring them on board through their channels they are using today to operate, whether those channels have wallets or bank accounts, as long as they get onto PAPSS. So that means we help bring them, formalize them, and bring them into the formal system. So PAPSS in a big way is going to support financial inclusion. Janice, I hope that answers you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Janice.
Thank you. So shall we take Addison?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, and good afternoon, good evening, Global Chamber and PAPSS team for putting this together. This is very laudable, and I'm very impressed listening to the presenters on the intent and then also the POC that they have done so far. My question is on the integration side. I think I've not heard much about the use of blockchain and the smart contract capability that it brings to this type of systems. That is one. I'm sure maybe you are silent because a lot of governments have naturally not opened up on blockchain and this capability in terms of financial integration and a payment system. That's one. Then my second question also has to do with the liquidity provision. I heard you saying that I think the government, or I don't know whether the members have to provide liquidity. So I don't know whether the liquidity has to be provided by the central banks, each central bank, member's central bank. So if that is the case, I'm just looking at the complexity around the current payment global system where countries have to provide, or commercial banks have to provide liquidity to SWIFT in other Citibank or other bank city somewhere, which has become an asset for them for the development of their economies. So are we not creating a similar situation where other countries, other struggling countries in Africa will be providing liquidity that will be sitting somewhere? That becomes another problem. Because for payment system like this, a lot of the time is liquidity. I think last year or so, I know some countries in Africa were struggling with liquidity. Even students cannot even pay their fees abroad for them to go and finish their school because the country is having challenges getting dollar and all those things. So if those liquidity issues have to be pre-funded, we have to pre-fund. Are we not going to create a problem? Shouldn't it be possible that PAP with their capability will actually provide that liquidity up to at least a level that people just plug in, pay, and then they settle and all those kind of things? That is what I want to ask. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Addison. Actually, your last statement answers what happens in PAPSS. PAPSS is a pre-funded system whereby we don't require banks or central banks to come and deposit money and go away and forget about it. We require them to fund up the extent that they believe can cover their payments. And that's why we say, that's why there's a standby facility from Afrexim Bank in case that liquidity provided maybe is not covering what has been traded that day. Then the central bank picks from what we have, in the facility we have, and be able to settle the trades, so that we don't take liquidity from them, and we also don't compromise the system. Now, you also started, and thank you very much for mentioning this, which is a cost I had forgotten to mention that. Our banks, by using correspondent banking, they are keeping a lot of deposits out that are not to our benefit. So that's what we also want to disintermediate. So our system is pre-funded, and you fund, any institution is going to fund up to the trades they think they have made within Africa. If central bank determines and says, well, with trades that are happening, and recall also this on a net basis, perhaps is a multilateral net settlement system. The trades are netted off locally. If say Bank of Ghana, at the end of the day, they do their numbers and find that they've traded with say Nigeria up to equivalent of $100 million. And Nigeria has also traded with them up to $80 million. So 80 is netted off. And now the Bank of Ghana or the Bank of Nigeria has only to deal with the $20 million, the difference. So that's how it is structured. We looked at all those hurdles that are within the present day arrangement, and that's what we came in to solve. Addison, I hope I answered your question.
Yes, you have. I think there's one on the blockchain that I didn't hear.
Oh, blockchain.
And
No,
the smart contract capability.
Blockchain is a smart contract capability. A blockchain is a technology, and smart contract capability is something that is used in trade finance. We came in to solve the monetary flow problem, but now realize a couple of things along the way. Now, the smart contract capability is part of the trade finance chain, where LCs and everything is automated. We are trying to work out with banks, commercial banks, to see how we can link this to PAPSS. Whatever they have, we can link it, or we develop a product that can be used for that purpose. But as we must appreciate is that we have started with a payment angle. Now we are looking at other challenges that within that trade cycle. So that's a very good suggestion from you and something we are looking at. We are trying to see which companies we can work with that can do it, and looking at the possibilities, especially that now we are dealing with commercial banks directly. So that smart contract capability is what we're looking at in terms of facilitating trade. In terms of blockchain, it's okay. Blockchain is a technology, and we are watching where it's going. We are open to what capabilities can do for us, but in the initial stages today, we want to enhance transactions, let them use what we have as we look at the possibilities of using blockchain technology as well. Because as we know, it's a very secure technology and something that we should be able to adopt to, given what's happening today. But we're still using what we have for now. The plan is to look at what's happening and adopt to any technology that's of value at that point in time when we shall be operating.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. I'll actually reach out to you directly for some ideas on that side.
I am going to put my email in the chat so that everyone can know. And I will encourage Noel to do the same.
So, yes, Mr. Bosco, there are a couple of questions. There's one in the chat. I think a couple of them are dropping in as well, but let me ask this one. How does startups plug into PAPSS? How does startups plug into PAPSS? When is PAPSS expected to become operational, for instance, in Ghana?
I will answer this, and I'll also let my colleague touch on it as well. What is the structure of PAPSS? The way we started, as I looked at the ecosystem, was to implement and develop the core system of PAPSS, which we did. And central banks plugged in, starting with a pilot central bank, of which the Bank of Ghana has been a very key supporter, a very good collaborator. The Bank of Ghana is live on the system. The GIPS, which is the interbank switching system, is also live on the system. And now we are working with banks to connect them to PAPSS through the switch. Why do we do through the switch? Because the switch connects all banks in the jurisdiction. In Ghana, for instance, GIPS does. In Nigeria, NIBS does. In Gambia, GAM switch does, and elsewhere. So that becomes a one point of contact with all the commercial banks that are participating in that switch. So we have connected all those bits, central bank for settlement purposes, GIPS for reasons of attaching all banks, and now we are integrating commercial banks. In a few weeks, we expect to be live on the system. Noel, you may chip in here.
Okay, thank you very much, Bosco. So I just wanted to add an element on how we have startups connecting to PAPSS. So let's say that we can qualify them as entities that do not participate in the RTGS system of the central banks. So for such, they will be qualified as indirect participants in PAPSS because they will need to have an account open with the banks participant in PAPSS so that those banks can do the pre-funding activities for them. So if we have an entity that do not participate in the RTGS system and that would like to be participating in PAPSS, they will be called indirect participants in PAPSS. They will still be able to send direct instruction to PAPSS, but for the pre-funding activity, they will need to definitely write on the bank participant in PAPSS for that to be done. In terms of when are we planning to be live in Ghana, we are actually at the last stage of finalizing the pilot. So we had, as Bosco was saying earlier, we had onboarded the central banks in the WAMSI region. They have been able to complete controlled live transaction. Now we are at the stage of fast tracking the onboarding of the commercial banks. That's why we have up to 27 commercial banks that have signed the membership agreement, and there are different stages of the onboarding onto PAPSS. And then we are now at the stage of kicking off with live transaction in PAPSS. So we'll officially announce it when the time will be up. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, thank you very much. Related to that, we earlier on had a question also from somebody asking that they've been in touch with you, and then they learned that there were some banks that were going to go live by the end of this month, May, meaning today, by end of today. There were some banks that were supposed to go live. So the person wants to know whether that is going to happen.
Okay, so I will comment on that, and I'll also allow my deputy CEO to comment on that. Today is the 31st of May. We just want to make sure that everything is up and running because this is for the benefit of our continent. This is a history that we are writing, so we want to make sure that everything is up and running. And then we are also impatient to see the effect, the good impact that the system will have on the continent. And for such reason, we are taking all the relevant actions to ensure that everything is in place before proceeding to that step of being live. So please bear with us. In the upcoming weeks, in our coming days, I think we will all be happy to see the live transaction flowing from a country to another country. I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, but if you could probably, is it possible to give some clear timelines, maybe in a week's time, 2 weeks' time or something, so that at least I'm sure people are itching to hear when exactly to go live.
Actually, maybe let me just clarify on this, that we want very much to have this transaction coming from Ghana. So as I said, we've already done the central bank screen. We have finalized with Switch, and we've finalized with funding settlement accounts with the Bank of Ghana. So what's remaining is now to look at the bank, to have the last system with the bank being put into production stage, and then having these transactions run through. So we are kind of tying the knots around. And if it was writing an essay, we'll be dotting the I's and crossing the T's to be able to say that this transaction cannot have any, there are no glitches anywhere. So let's say these are IT systems, but I can probably say in the next 1 week or two, we should have something running through these banks, and the banks themselves talking about it.
Great. I think that's very helpful. It's very helpful. Thank you very much. I have another question. What is the step-by-step approach for newbies who want to connect on PAPSS? People who are just fresh, who wants to connect to PAPSS. What are the step-by-step approach? approaches?
I think Noel can take that.
Definitely. So the first step will be to, first of all, to connect to her website. And then there's a link on our website where you can actually submit your application to be participant. So once we have your application submitted, there's a number of documentation that we'll be requesting from that entity to provide. And then once this has been, those documents has been completed, and we'll kick off into a project charter or project management. So as soon as we have the membership agreement signed, we'll kick off with the project management that include obviously the technical integration. And then we'll have training. We'll also have, because this is a system that will be used by some users that will be appointed by the entity that would like to be participants. So we'll train those users, and then we'll do some tests of system, and then we'll be able to go live with that entity. So the first step is definitely to go on our website. There's a link on the website where you'll be able to provide the information. I will type I will share the link that gives you access to that form to be filled on the website. And then once this is done, we'll be able to proceed. You can also reach out to me with my on my email address that I shared. I'm responsible for memberships and participant management. So I'll be really happy to receive those applications.
All right, thank you very much. That is very clear. So, and I have another question. I think we have more questions, so I don't know. We have to manage the time too as well. How can a US exporter utilize your platform, both from the US to one country and between two or more African countries? For example, exporting their products. So I don't know if you've got the question. I can take it up again. It says that, sorry, I'm trying to navigate this. Yeah, how can a US exporter utilize your platform? That's the first question. And then we went on further to say both from the US to one country and between two or more African countries.
Yeah, I think I get the question.
Their products.
I have read it, and I've read it in the chat, and I think I get the question. The question is talking about a US exporter. That means an exporter in US in Virginia exporting something to Africa.
Yeah.
At this point in time, PAPSS is not looking at cross-continent trade. We are looking at intra-African trade. So we will first support what's happening on the continent. That's between Ghana, Nigeria, between Nigeria and Kenya, between Kenya and South Africa, between Mali and Lesotho within Africa. Let me give a context to this. The intra-African trade is at about between 14 to 16%. Intra-European is above 70%, intra-Asia is above 50%, intra-American is high as well. Now, that's the reason we looked at heads of state, AU Assembly, and the heads of state signed the agreement on SFTA to be able to move from 16% upwards, because we want to make sure that what we produce here remains here and is bought here. And this will be something that can uplift the people's welfare. That's why the first assignment, the first objective is to increase intra-African trade. PAPSS' first objective to support the SFTA Secretary to increase intra-African trade. So we are first dealing with Africa, and then we can come to intercontinental trade.
Yeah. That is very clear. Thank you very much, Mr. Bosco. I'm running through my...
We do have a question from Bob, our colleague, Bob in Sao Paulo in Brazil.
Okay.
He says, how does PAPSS resolve potential money laundering issues that can arise with respect to the cross-border payments facilitated? Can you share some light on the dedicated infrastructure that exists in this regards?
Let me answer that, maybe, but I can answer it without putting the slide up. In the core PAPSS system, one of the capabilities is anti-money laundering and financing of terrorism and screening. So we have that screening in place. And this is based on the sanctions that have been issued by UN and any other that we can put in. So the system checks. However, we also bank on the fact that since the transaction goes through a bank as a direct participant in our system, the bank has also checked. And likewise, the central bank also checks at this level. So by the time it goes through a PAPSS system, to be able to check, it has gone through several levels of screening. So we have a screening mechanism. It's an anti-money laundering and sanction screening mechanism. So we have checks and balances in our system to be able to do that.
Yeah, that was a very important clarification there, because as we talk about, intra-Africa trade and now having a common platform where payments will be made, it's important to address the issue of fraud, because it's something that we see all the time, so it's very important that you have the measures in place to check that as well. So thank you very much. I'm not sure if there are any further questions. I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat box, but please, if there's anybody who has, before we round up and close the session, don't leave here without getting your questions answered. This is the best opportunity you have. So feel free, let me see your hand, and then I'll call you to ask a question. Just give me some few seconds. If I don't see any hands, then it means that we're on the right path. All right. Ruby, I'm not seeing any further questions. And I don't have more further questions from my end here too. So I guess all our concerns as business people have been addressed. They've been answered, and we are okay. We are waiting for the opportunity to start, patronizing the PAPSS to help in our intra-Africa trade, and also support the implementation of the AFCFTA. So at this juncture, if there are no further questions, we'd like to know if Mr. Doug Brooke, the CEO of Global Chamber, is with us. Doug, okay, thank you. I don't know if we
thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Oh, great.
Yes, we can.
Great. See you.
Great. Hi, everybody. Doug Brunke. I'm the CEO and founder of Global Chamber. Sorry, I'm outside, just finished my bicycle ride this morning, and I was able to listen to the entire program. So I really appreciate all of the information. I'm a very strong believer in Ruby Golo. She's just amazing. And one of the things that I encourage all of you to think about is being connected to Ruby in a strong way. There are all sorts of things to help you grow your business, and Ruby has her fingers on just about all of them, including this. This is a great topic. The thing is about international business, there's a lot of things involved with it, and Ruby fortunately knows almost everything, and if she doesn't know it, she knows somebody who does know it. An example of that was a member of ours this morning who needed some intellectual property protection in China. And I think Cesar Trabanco of Global Chambers on the line. I think we connected them with 3 or 4 different people to be able to choose from to be able to solve their problem. And that one they needed to solve by Friday for some reason. So we gave them a few people. So Ruby, thank you for putting this program together. Thanks for all that you do with Global Chamber Accra. Thank you all members for supporting our chapter in Ghana. Thank you for the members like Nihi in Lagos and around Africa and around the world for supporting Global Chamber. Trade is important. When I think about Africa, one of the things I want to see in the next 10 to 20 years is a much stronger international exporting mentality, not just across African country borders, but around the world. I think it's very possible and doable. I'm a bit of an old guy. I've been involved with international business for 35 years. I've seen a lot of progress, particularly in Asia over the last 35 years. I believe that in the next 20 years, Africa can make just as much progress as Asia has made in the last 35 years. Let's work together to do that. Thank you very much for all of you again for participating today, and I turn it back to you.
Thank you very much from the CEO himself. Thank you. And thank you to all our wonderful participants and members of Global Chamber. Thank you very much. Ruby, maybe you may want to say the last words.
All right. Thank you so much, Isaac, for moderating. You did a brilliant job. And my thanks goes to officials from PAPSS. It's been a great opportunity working with you on this event today. Thank you so much for your time. And to Doug, thank you so much for your kind words. My passion is to help businesses not just grow locally, but internationally as well. And so in course of the event, we had put a link in the chat box. I will encourage everyone to leave their details behind so we can share the recording and the slides as well. And on that note, I say thank you for joining us today. We meet every last Tuesday of the month, and so please watch out for our next event, which is all about branding. If you want to personally brand yourself, your company, then please book the date. It's 28th of June, same time, 2 p.m. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day and see you all soon. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Ruby.
Thank you very much, Ruby.
Bye.
Bye.